parents to share the news of our budget crisis and to discuss workable solutions. I have also met with legislators from across the state, North and South, urban and rural, Republicans and Democrats and independents, of solving this massive problem as quickly as possible. I have also received economists in an unprecedented position. We faced crises in the past. When floodwaters rose and damaging winds bruised and battered us, we pulled together as one Louisiana. People from every walk of life, black and white, urban and rural, joined hands and resolved to get our state back on its feet. Once again, we must focus on solutions and not allow party labels and bickering to pull us apart. This Sunday, just 3 days from now, state lawmakers will convene in a special legislative session. For the next 3 weeks, we will take on the difficult task of correcting the largest budget deficit in our state's history. We know that behind every budget number are real Louisiana citizens. People like Braden Wilson. Braden is 9 years old and suffers from Lee's disease. He's been bedridden since birth and requires around-the-clock care. There's nothing in the world Braden's mom, Cody, wouldn't do for her family. And as a father of 3, I understand that. But the Wilsons and thousands of others like them are at risk of going bankrupt if the state program they rely on to help pay for Braden's care is severely cut. It's called the Now Waiver Program, and they can't get by without it. It is one of many that will take a major hit if we do not solve our budget problems. I will also tell you about cuts we are facing that, without your support to fix, will close down higher education institutions across our state. As I sit here with you tonight, we now have a more than $940 million budget deficit for this current fiscal year ending June 30th. In the year that starts July 1st, we are facing a $2 billion budget deficit. And because the Louisiana Constitution does not allow us to fix either of these budget deficits in the regular legislative session, we have just 3 weeks, starting this Sunday, to make the changes we need. We will not be paralyzed in fear by the size of this challenge, nor should we falsely claim the sky is falling. But this is a historic fiscal crisis, the likes of which our state has never seen, and absolute candor is required. First of all, how did we get here? While my predecessor inherited $1 billion surplus when he became governor, I've been left with almost $1 billion deficit for this year alone and a $2 billion deficit for next year. For 7 years in a row, the state has had growing budget deficits. Year after year, the previous administration made temporary fixes using one-time funds to patch recurring expenses, knowing that eventually the well would run dry. And it has. This year's $940 million budget deficit is made up of 2 different categories. First, the Revenue Estimating Conference, the panel of economists and financial experts our legislature relies on, met yesterday and told us that we are $570 million short of the revenue we originally expected for the year. That's the first part of the problem, and it's due in part to the drop in oil prices and a slowdown in sales and corporate tax collections. In fact, we're paying out more in credits and refunds to corporations this year than we're collecting from them in taxes. This is not sound financial policy. The other part of our $940 million budget problem this year is $370 million in commitments we made that we don't have the funds to pay for. This is partly due to irresponsible budgeting by the previous administration. They failed to account for how many people would need access to public health care, how many students would qualify for TOPS, how many people will enroll in our public schools, and how many state inmates would be housed by our sheriffs, among other failures. Now, the money is not there to pay those bills. I know we've all heard alarming talk about budgets before, but this is our reality. There are some who will try to downplay the severity of our problems for political gain. Some will claim our state's economists' numbers are false. Others will say we simply need to cut our way out of this mess. Remember, for 8 years we've had a conservative governor with a conservative legislature. If stabilizing the budget were as easy as cutting spending and simply reducing state contracts, that would have been done already. but it hasn't. Today, the stakes are far too high for Washington-style politics or for a crisis in leadership. I recall saying two things our state would never run out of were gumbo and gumption. Now is the time for both. To stabilize our state's budget, we should not shy away from the fiscal right-sizing that is needed. For me, right-sizing requires that we get both the spending and the revenue right. Focusing on one without the other would be irresponsible. But I want you to understand that if left unresolved, if the legislature does not choose a way to raise additional dollars to strengthen the budget, and very soon, we will face unimaginable cuts to vital state services. Here are some examples. Our healthcare system is on the verge of imploding. The Department of Health and Hospitals is already facing severe cuts. And without new revenue, those cuts will be catastrophic. With larger cuts looming next year, safety net hospitals will close, starting in places like Lake Charles, Alexandria, and Bogalusa. The healthcare services that are in jeopardy literally mean the difference between life and death. Funding for vital services like hospice care and end-stage kidney dialysis would be impacted. The new Opportunity Waiver, also known as the Now Waiver, which provides much-needed help for families with developmental disabilities like Cody Wilson's, whom I told you about earlier, is under consideration for painful cuts and could be offered to far fewer people. I don't say this to scare you, but I'm going to be honest with you. No more tricks, no more smoke, and no more mirrors. Now let's talk about our universities, community, and technical colleges. The Louisiana Top Scholarship Fund is now so depleted that if the legislature does not raise additional revenue, fewer high school students will receive awards and current recipients are in jeopardy of losing their existing scholarships for next year. Even with additional revenue, higher education this year will need to cut $42 million. This will be combined with a $28 million cut in top scholarship funds that the universities will have to absorb, resulting in the largest mid-year cut in Louisiana history. However, if there's no new revenue raised this year, higher education will face catastrophic cuts over the next 4 months. Investment in higher education in the nation over the last 8 years. As I mentioned earlier, if the legislature fails to act, and if we are forced to proceed with these cuts, the LSU Ag Center and parish extension offices in every parish and the Pennington Biomedical Research Center will close by April 1st, and the LSU main campus in Baton Rouge will run out of money after April 30th, as will the Health Sciences Center in Shreveport and LSU Eunice. There is no money left to pay for payroll after those dates. The Southern University System and the University of Louisiana system and the Louisiana Community and Technical College system are in the same boat. Without legislators approving new revenue this special session, some campuses will be forced to declare financial bankruptcy, which would include massive layoffs and the cancellation of classes. If you're a student attending one of these universities, it means that you will receive a grade of incomplete. Many students will not be able to graduate, and student athletes across the state at those schools will be ineligible to play next semester. That means you can say farewell to college football next fall. The development of our technical and community college system has been one of our greatest points of progress over the last 2 decades. The current budget realities will decimate these institutions as they are already preparing to lay off 1,200 employees at a time when business and industry's primary concern is the development of a world-class workforce. These are not scare tactics. This is reality. An unstable state budget will not only hurt children and working families in our state, it will devastate communities, businesses, and local government as well. So where do we go from here? While I did not create the problem before us, as your governor, it is my job to fix it, and that is what I intend to do. And I am fully aware that I did not campaign on a platform of raising taxes, but the state's deficit is now more than twice as big as anyone ever anticipated. So clearly, when the facts surrounding the problem change so dramatically, so must the solutions. Here's what I need you to do. We cannot solve this problem without support from you for the measures I am proposing to stabilize our budget. First of all, I am proposing significant cuts, including a hiring freeze across state government, a reduction in state contracts, and I'm making more than $160 million in cuts to state government spending. I also propose to use $128 million from the Rainy Day Fund and $200 million in non-coastal BP payments to the state to reduce the current year deficit. Beyond those painful cuts and other proposals to fill our current $940 million deficit and next year's $2 billion deficit, I am proposing a set of revenue-raising measures to stabilize our budget. These proposals include further reducing tax credits, suspending corporate tax deductions, and adding 1 penny of sales tax to our state's 4-cent sales tax. I am proposing this penny as a bridge that will give us time to stabilize and restructure our state's tax code. When that restructuring is complete, this penny of sales tax will be removed. As part of this restructuring, I am also proposing an increase in alcohol and cigarette taxes. So as we begin this very hard work, I need you to call your representatives and your senators. You can find out how to do that using a link on the governor's office website at gov.louisiana.gov. Tell your legislators we need a responsible fix for this budget, a balance of necessary cuts and responsible revenue that will make our budget realistic and our state strong. When you hear others talk about solutions, demand specifics. Together, we will solve this historic problem. In Louisiana, we are resilient and we are determined to meet any challenge that comes our way. We are experienced at working together in the face of great adversity, and I know our brightest days are ahead. As we begin this critical work together, please join me in praying for our state, and I'm asking that you to please pray for me and for all of our elected officials. God bless you and your family. God bless the great state of Louisiana, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you all, and good night.
Well, you just heard Governor John Bel Edwards address the state about our dire budget situation, and he certainly painted a very frightening picture. He said this is the largest deficit in our state's history, and a new number, $940 million, he says we have to make up by June 30th to cover the deficit for this year. He said that there are going to be some historic cuts, and there could be closures of colleges, hospitals, some important programs if we do not make a change. He talked about cuts and kept saying we need to increase revenue. And of course, increasing revenue means increasing taxes. He said that he wanted to reduce the tax credits and then increase the sales tax as a bridge. So certainly a very dire picture he painted.
Yeah, bleak is the word that comes to mind. But joining us now to provide the official Republican response to the governor's speech, 5-term state treasurer John Kennedy.
Good evening. I'm John Kennedy, and I have the honor of serving as your state treasurer. I'm not using a teleprompter tonight. I just want to speak to you from my heart. In 2005, the Louisiana state budget was $16.5 billion. Today, it's $25 billion. That's a 40% increase over a period of time when our economy, as measured by gross domestic product, only grew 25%. So how come we're running deficits? It's really pretty simple. For 7 years, the Louisiana legislature, at the encouragement of the then governor, spent more money than it took in. And it papered over the problem by raiding every single state savings account it could find and using every accounting gimmick in the books. Well, the state savings accounts are gone now, and they're out of tricks. And the chickens have come home to roost, and that's why we're running a budget deficit. What do we do about it? How do we balance a budget? Governor Edwards is proposing to implement the largest tax increase in the history of Louisiana. Basically what the governor is saying, he's telling Louisiana families and Louisiana businesses that they have to cut their budgets so that Louisiana state government doesn't have to cut its budget. Governor Edwards is proposing to raise personal income tax, sales taxes, corporate income tax, corporate franchise taxes, business utility taxes, inventory taxes, cigarette taxes, liquor taxes, telephone taxes, and he wants to do a new internet tax. It will wreck our economy, already fragile, and it won't work. I don't care how high they raise revenue. As long as they spend more money than they take in, they're going to run deficits. Now, I've sent the governor and each legislator over 400 different ideas and suggestions about how they can reduce spending without hurting anyone. Here they are, right here. Let me mention a couple. Number one, we have $400 million of taxpayer money tied up in 156 statutory dedications. We need to unlock that money and require the programs that that money is paying for to compete with universities and health care for appropriations. Number two, we have 19,000 consultants paid for by taxpayers on our payroll. They charge too much, and we don't need all of them. Number three, according to the legislative auditor, 22% of all of our managers in the classified service of Louisiana state government manage one employee. We have way too many expensive generals and not nearly enough foot soldiers. Number four, we need to start saying no, as the law allows us to our friends on Medicaid who go to emergency rooms, expensive emergency rooms, to be treated for things like acne, to get a pregnancy test, to have a wart removed, to talk to someone about losing weight, to see if they need glasses. It costs 5 times more to treat them in an ER than it does in a private clinic. Number 5, 3% of the 1.4 million Louisianians on Medicaid spend 43% of the money. We need to find out why. And number 5, according to the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, 10% of the $9 billion taxpayer dollars that we spend every year on Medicaid is attributable to fraud. That's $900 million a year. Even if CMS is half wrong, that's $450 million a year. We need to embed about 15 auditors from the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office in DHH, root out the fraud, and prosecute the perpetrators to the full extent of the law. Now, in just a couple of minutes here, I've given you 6 ideas, there are many more, that if we do them properly, will save between $500 million and $1 billion hard-earned taxpayer dollars. We don't have a revenue problem. We got a spending problem. But it can be fixed. And you know why I know that? Because I watch Louisiana families and I watch Louisiana businesses live within their means every single day. And now it's Louisiana state government's turn.
Well, Mr. Kennedy, 25 days is not a whole lot of time for discussion. And when the governor released his call, it included some 36 items on which lawmakers can actually file bills in the upcoming session. You've seen this before. You've been there before.
I've seen this movie before.
Yes, indeed. How successful are the special sessions when it comes to state law, taxes, and those spending cuts?
Well, we don't need a special session to get started. Here's what the governor could do in the morning. He could call in every one of his cabinet secretaries and say, within the next 20 days, I want you to go back and reduce your consultants by 10%. Now, I've been in the state government a long time. I know at least one of those cabinet secretaries is going to say, Governor, I can't do it. I need all of them. That's the one you fire. And then the rest of them are going to go, whoa, he's serious. We're going to go reduce some of these consulting contracts. You know, we're supposed to be broke. You know what we did a few months ago? We signed a $1.1 million consulting contract with an artist to develop a sculpture for one of our public hospitals. And I'm sure it's going to be a great sculpture. But it's not going to deliver any health care. We just signed a contract for $12 million with a consultant in Baton Rouge. You know what her job is? To help the Louisiana Department of Economic Development come up with a marketing plan. I mean, come on. You know, we have or have had consulting contracts to analyze how our kids play at recess, to teach people how to use Facebook, to encourage people to wear their seatbelts. And that's only one of the ideas. These are the ideas I sent to the governor. There are 400 of them. Don't tell me we can't live within our means. I watch families and businesses do it every single day. Listen, I understand the governor's position. I just respectfully disagree. He thinks we're one tax increase away from prosperity. I don't. I don't think we can tax or spend or regulate this state into prosperity.
All right, Treasurer Kennedy, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you for having
your
me.
point of view.
Thank you for making the time available to respond.
It's an important subject matter.
Thank you very much.
So what can lawmakers expect to accomplish in this short amount of time? Right now, let's go to our political reporter, Fred Childers and Jeremy Alford, to talk about it. They're at the Capitol.
Governor Edwards. Here, Governor Edwards behind me taking some questions from the audience, but one of his major things was talking about some of the health and hospitals and some of the higher education issues that the state will be dealing with. Right now, some of the questions that he's dealing with are these scare tactics. He says these are not scare tactics and that these are things that really need to be addressed, and he realizes that these are very historical problems that the state is meeting, and soon we'll be talking with Jeremy Alford and get some of his analysis. But there is a news conference going on right now, and what you're seeing are the reporters asking him some of these questions. These are going to be very pointed questions and very direct questions, and I'll let you just take a look at. You can see next to him is Commissioner of Administration Jay Darden, and okay, so let's go back to you in the studio, guys.
All right, Fred, thank you very much. And we'll let you know what was said during that question and answer period with the governor a little bit later on tonight. Of course, a busy evening here in Baton Rouge, but there were a lot of hot topics that were touched upon by both the governor and the treasurer tonight, this evening. And we talked about just a few of those, Jackie. And the biggest takeaway from all of this is that the problem is bigger than a lot of us thought.
The number shocked me because it kept increasing. First it was $750 million, then $850 million. Now he's saying $940 million we have to come up with by June 30th. So quite a frightening task to take on.
All right. Well, there's another presidential or another public official in town, presidential candidate Donald Trump, and Danielle Grossman is there now waiting for Donald Trump to begin his rally downtown. Danielle, he should be walking out in just a few minutes' time here. What's the atmosphere like there right now?
Yep, here at the Baton Rouge River Center, literally any minute, Donald Trump is going to take the stage right behind me and speak to the people here in Baton Rouge. And it's a packed house. Obviously, there's some empty seats up top, but right behind us, it's packed because obviously they want to be able to see Donald speak. This is also the third presidential candidate running in 2016 to visit Baton Rouge. We also had Ted Cruz and we had Hillary Clinton. Everyone is very excited. People are making all kinds of homemade T-shirts. We have Trump T-shirts, Veterans for Trump, all kinds of people from all over the state of Louisiana are here to see what he has to say, why he thinks that he should be the commander-in-chief for the United States of America. Of course, we're going to let you know tomorrow morning on WBLA, Local 33 News, Morning Edition, and see what he has to say and obviously see what all the people in the reaction is to his speech. And it's a very exciting night. But for now, live in Baton Rouge, Danielle Grossman, back to you guys.
Yeah, we were looking at the traffic a little bit earlier. 10,000 people showed up in the building, so it's jammed to the rafters, but traffic is an absolute mess downtown.
It certainly is. We're going to check in now with Fred Childers. He's going to be giving us an update on what's going on with the press conference with Governor John Bel Edwards. Some of the things he talked about, just making the cuts and increasing revenue. That's the way, he said, is the ticket to balancing the budget. Fred?
Process one of those areas that need a supplemental appropriation. $28 million short in the current year. There is no prospects for a supplemental appropriation without new revenue. That is one of the shortage areas. The legislature did not appropriate enough money for college. So we're not in a position to release the final draw for Thomas. Now, what's going to happen is the universities, as I said, in my talk just now, the university is going to absorb that $28 million shortfall.
Governor John Bel Edwards was just talking about the TOPS program. Today we learned that the TOPS payments have been suspended until state lawmakers figure out what is going on with our budget crisis.
That happening just late this afternoon. So things are happening fast and furious, but the big key is starting this Sunday, the special session goes to work. How much can they accomplish in that special session is the big question. And will there be cooperation across the aisle?
Well, what's interesting is that Governor Edwards said that it took 7 years to create this problem, and now in 3 weeks they have to solve it. And it's quite a task to take on. Well,
and I guess the problem is there are different ideas and different philosophies on how to fix it, but which one is going to be adopted, and which way can we get everybody in the same boat pulling the oars in the same direction? Because clearly time is running out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of the cuts and increasing revenue is what they're going to rely on. That's what Governor John Bel Edwards is calling for.
And they're going to need help from presidential hopefuls and candidates and whoever emerges as the president, Donald Trump, in town tonight. But there is going to have to be some help from Washington as well involved in this. So it's very important as folks get ready to head to the polls March the 5th to get some of these things answered. Well, thank you so much for joining us
for our special coverage of the governor's address on your local election headquarters. We'll have much more tonight on our local newscasts across the state. I'm Jackie Joseph.
And I'm Fred Hickman. Join us Sunday for This Week in Louisiana Politics, where we'll have full, in-depth coverage on both sides of the governor's speech and his plans for the legislative sessions. Good night, everyone.